Thank you for that introduction. Cool guy, nothing to live up to there, no pressure. It's a interesting journey I've had to get to be the mayor of what I call Awesome Town, in Regan, Northern Beaches. It's an amazing place to live, and how lucky am I to be able to serve my community. It's an interesting journey, and it's one I was interesting listening to our previous speakers just then, and the leadership's about the purveying hope and that message of hope. And it's an extraordinary thing, and it's amazing how all through your life, particularly as a kid, you're a sponge, and you're just absorbing things, and it's amazing what influences you. 20 years later, you go, remember that time? And it still continues today. And I remember being here for one of the many school presentations that you go to. Do you know I average about 27 school presentations in about 4 weeks over Christmas, New Year? It's amazing. I was sitting here and Pastor Phil was doing one of his magnificent speeches, and he said, he talked about leadership, and he talked about it being a vision maker, decision maker, problem solver, team player. And you know, I'm 42 this year, and I still remember those things still resonate with you because you're always learning. And the journey to mayor was interesting because I hate politics, hate it with a passion, and hate's a very strong word. My grandmother always said, never use the word hate, except, honestly, politics. What goes? What gives? It is an extraordinarily terrible thing. It gets in the way of progress. It gets in the way of good decisions. And I'm a doer. Always have been. I was the first person to put my hand up and just do something. I don't want to talk about it. Just get on with it. Solve it. So I guess when I was 17 years of age, like every boy in year 11 and who's 17 thinks he knows everything, and sometimes he does, and most of the time he doesn't, I was told by my school principal, Michael, you were in the top 5 students last year, and 6 months later you're now in the bottom 10. I don't think school's for you. I think you need to go and get a job. The deal is you get yourself a full-time job, and I'll give you a completion certificate for year 11. Awesome. So I dutifully went off and said, thanks, Mr. Carroll, I'm going to go and get myself a full-time job. And that I did at Sydney City Council. They hired me as a clerk in the engineers department. And I went through a lot of change in that 10 or 15 years that I was there, or 10, 11 years I was there. And lucky me, I was surrounded by people in my life very early on. My auntie was 21 in 1981, and she was not allowed to join the police force because she was a woman and she was married. And she said, well, that's just ridiculous. And the person at the time who was in charge of the police, Christine Nixon, she was in charge of recruitment at the time, called her into the office and told her this is why. She said, well, I don't accept that. I want to take this further. And being a strong woman that my Auntie Beth was, she said, well, I want to become a policeman. That's not going to stop me. And Krista Nixon said, excellent, go and pass this test and we'll ignore this ever happened. She then became a very successful police officer and changed forever the way that victims of domestic violence and particularly child abuse victims are heard in courts now. She made the change. As a 21-year-old woman who was married, who wasn't allowed to join the police force, 10 years later, has now changed legislation forever to give victims of domestic violence and child abuse a voice. That's a pretty good person to be surrounded by and influenced by. Then there's my dad. He sadly passed away in 1999. He had cancer when he was 16. So the same age I'm telling everyone I know everything and I'm leaving school. My dad, who had cancer when he was 16, spent his whole year in hospital, did his year 10 certificate in hospital. He was given his last rites 3 times. They would say he was going to die. He had scars. They cut the cancers out then back then in the 60s. Obviously, plastic surgery wasn't big on the radar then. So he had a whole bunch of scars and didn't let that deter him. He was the type of guy who says, well, that's okay. He went on to become a maths master at Marylands High School. His first gig out of university was at James Roos. And he was always the guy who put his hand up first to give free tuition to kids after school and maths. His proudest achievement was 4 of his students in year 12 at Marylands went on to do actuarial studies and survive, not drop out. So again, surrounded by, and then I love my music. See, I wanted to be a rock star when I grew up. That's the only thing I knew I wanted to do was be a rock star. I even wear the treble clef around my neck. And I heard my hero, Bono, say that international symbol of peace. It's the one thing that absolutely changes the mood in a room. And he said, and if you had Osama bin Laden and George Bush, who were at war at the time with each other, if you sat them in the same room and both put on a classical CD of, I think it was Bach, they could both talk to each other in a very humane way, in a very genuine, friendly way, and talk about their love of this music. And yet, they're actually trying to kill each other with various weapons and what have you. But music is this great, amazing, powerful tool. And it brings hope and it brings peace. And that resonated with me a lot. And there was something that I was playing cricket. And this is how I suddenly was playing cricket at a few years ago now, 2007 it was. And I couldn't come into bowl because the pitch was sunk this much into the ground. And I said, who are the clowns in charge at council? I can do a better job than these guys. And again, I come back to, I don't believe in throwing stones. I actually believe in just getting in there inside the tent, inside the room, and influence the change, influence the decisions. And that's what it's about at council. And it's about purveying that hope and everyone has a hope for their community, that it's the best community they live in and they love their community. We have 152 square kilometres of bush and beach in Warringah alone. And it's an extraordinary privilege, and 150,000 population. It's an extraordinary privilege to be a caretaker of that. I mean, that population includes the Prime Minister and the Premier, no less. And aren't they on your back on a regular basis, letting you know about your job? But in a good way. And it's an interesting challenge. And I guess that in 2007, when I looked at this cricket pitch, and I'd been working in local government for a long time and worked in the private sector briefly, and I said, well, look, I can do a better job than this. This is a council that doesn't care about their community. They've been sacked 3 times. They're coming back to an opportunity to be elected in 2008. And myself and 12 other people put their hands up to be the mayor. I didn't put my hand up, I got pushed into putting my hand up. I missed a meeting and my teammate said, oh, you're the guy who's going to run for mayor on the ticket. Excellent. I just want to be on council. And suddenly I'm elected as the mayor. And I just went, how did that happen? And I'm thrust into this business now of it was at the time $180 million a year business. And I said, well, I want to do the boring stuff. I just want to get council back on track. I'm not here to open envelopes, cut ribbons. I have a vision for my community. And to go back to what Pastor Phil had said once, leadership is about being the vision maker. I had a very clear vision for my community. Get it back on track. Do the hard things. Do the things that bring about the long-term change and long-term benefits that today we're starting to see the fruits of our hard labour. And first, it was a very difficult time. We had councillors who wanted to play politics. We had a dysfunctional group of individuals who had massive egos and weren't there for the right reasons. And I set about a task of over that 4 years of trying to influence the right people to want to run for politics and for government and for local government. And that's a hard thing to do because it is a difficult job. You don't get paid very well for it, particularly if you're a councillor. Hours can be quite a lot. I mean, if you're involved in your church or you're involved in your other sporting groups and community groups, you can do 10, 20 hours without blinking. In council, you'll do 30 or 40 hours without even blinking. I do on average about 80 to 90. And that's giving up my Sunday, that's keeping my Sunday to myself. I love it. It's a privilege. But to encourage others is actually a difficult thing to do. But do it, I did. And it's a challenge in that we needed the right individuals to keep the momentum of our council and our community going forward because it's an interesting beast, council. It does everything from collect your garbage and fix your roads to your sporting fields to actually minding your children and taking the hard cases of children in childcare, the ones that the private sector don't want because it's too hard because they've got a disability. We don't have that luxury to say no, and frankly, we don't want that opportunity because we love the opportunity to be able to say yes and make a real difference. And we create the culture, and to create the culture of staff to be proud of their own organisation because they live in their community. Most of them live in the community or live nearby and they want to be proud of the organisation. They don't want you to think bad of them because they say, I work at Warringah Council. No, they want you to be proud that they work at Warringah. Oh, you're that person on the other end of the line who's really helped me. And it's up to us to change that culture. And I knew very clearly, very early on, that my role was not about influencing the next generation of people that I wanted on council because that was part of it. It was about influencing the staff change. And we've heard the different leadership stories, and we heard about the young boy that came back 18 months later and became a doctor later on, and what a great story. And that's the type of thing you want with your community, like, because they were very disappointed in what would happen in the past, and we still get brought up now, but less and less, and it's a legacy of the past. But I'm hoping, and I'm continually hoping to change it, and you can only do that by changing. We invested in our staff and we invested in our community in a big way, in a sensible way. And again, it's paying off with developments that we're doing now, such as the PCYC, Police Citizens Youth Club. That'll change the nature of our community on the Northern Beaches for decades, for 100 years potentially, if it's maintained properly. And the reason why, it's a facility for the 12 to 24-year-olds, and it's no longer a boys' club run by the police. It's actually for art and music and culture and dance, as well as sport, and it's girls and boys now, not just boys only. And that's a fantastic opportunity now to influence that and give another opportunity for our youth to engage with and before they get disengaged, because we're all seeing now in our society how easy it is to disengage. And it's a privilege to be able to deliver that without the politics, because the one thing that I guess I always look at and I focus on, and I come back to, and I have it sitting on my desk, is something that, again, my hero Bono said, which was, and he probably copied it again, but I don't care. It's one of those things that again resonates, and he said, vision over visibility stands for an insistence on looking past what you can see in favour of what could be. And that is so important, because there are so many obstacles that get in your way, and people put obstacles in your way, and politics puts even more obstacles in your way, which are just not right, and it's not fair. So I come back to, on a regular basis, I get told no a lot. The staff like to tell me no a lot, and we have these arguments, and we have a respectful argument, I should say. And diplomacy is the art of telling somebody they're going to hell, but they actually look like they're going to look forward to going there. So, and I have to do that job on a regular basis. If someone can't get their footpath or their neighbour's thing fixed, I've got to tell them, well, sorry, we can't do that. But they don't mind at the end of the conversation 99% of the time, because that's diplomacy. Trying to get people to run for council is interesting, because I do come back to this. It's about giving. If you want change, and you look at some of the political leadership that goes on now, what's set up? There is no hope. Mike Baird's the first good thing to come out of politics in a long time, in my view. The guy you see on TV is the guy who, I can assure you, is the bloke you talk to in the street with his wife and kids. And I can say that as an independent. I'm not aligned to the Liberal Party or the Labor Party or the Greens. I'm an independent. I think that's the type of guy he is, and I admire that. And I can tell you that the people we've got on council right now, at least half a dozen of them, 7 of them that I was allowed to influence. I've got a school teacher from Mimosa Public on there. She doesn't care a bit about politics. She just wants what's right for her community, and she's not a advocate for anything. She wants and has a great deal of hope, because her generation, her children, she wants this place to be in better shape than it is now for their future. We make decisions that are going to change the nature of the area for the next 50 years and 20 years. If we say that the French's Forest around the hospital is going to have 10,000 people in the next 5 years, then we have to create those plans. And it's a true story. Those things happen just like that and change. Decisions that we make will influence that change for the next 10 and 20 and 30 years. Kids that are in primary school now are going to have to live with those decisions that we make. So to encourage a university student onto council, which I did, was amazing. And she gives this completely amazing different outlook to the rest of us old people and on council with a different vision. And it's a refreshing way. And it's about how she provides a different perspective. Our school teacher, she provides this wonderful different perspective again. Then you have the paramedic, who's also Michael Clark's personal trainer at the same time. Another important job. So my role, I always see, is influencing not just my community and leading my community. It's about how we can have that vision. And yes, we can see all the problems, but how do we get beyond that? And it's really critical that we maintain the focus and we maintain the rage on that, and we encourage others. We're going to keep getting the same old politicians all the time if we don't encourage others to get involved and get engaged. And local government's where it starts. We are the heart and the soul and the face of the community. We get told that all the time. We're there and we influence the most change. I'd be bored as a state politician or federal politician because I can't influence the change. I can make serious change in my area, and it's a humbling, extraordinary privilege. I've met one of my other heroes, Jose Ramos from East Timor, who did extraordinary things in bringing to attention the atrocities that were going on over there with the Indonesians and the East Timorese. And he was another extraordinary leader in what he did in trying to highlight the change and influence the change that we've now got. And we've spoken about Mandela earlier, another great individual which you can't not learn from. So as I say, it starts, I guess, with your family and your friends, and it morphs as you get older into things like, as I said, my hero Bono, who I might add I'm going to see on Saturday night in LA. So my journey's been interesting, and I'm very privileged and humbled to have been able to do this. It's not necessarily an inspiring story. It's not necessarily a hard luck story, and I've come good. But it's a story nonetheless that our job is to provide hope to our community. It's our job to continually remember that hope is what it's all about, and going forward and learning. Put your hands up when you make a mistake. Acknowledge it. Get on with it. Fix it. It's about creating and being a leader. As Pastor Phil said, it's about, the vision maker, the problem solver. You get very complex problems to solve when you've got to tell 100 properties at Colorado Beach their houses can't be insured because one day in the next 20 years a wave will take their property. It's not hard. It's not easy to do, let me tell you. But there are ways we've got to solve those problems, and there's different ways. It's an extraordinary thing. And it's an extraordinary privilege and to have that around. So I guess I want to encourage the right people into local government and into politics in general. And as I said, I'm glad Mike's there because I think he's changing that face again. I'm doing my best at a local government level for my community and also for, I hope, the next generation. And the decisions we make, as I keep coming back to now, really do impact for the next 10, 20, 30 years, and that's what we've got to keep in mind at all times. So hopefully we're getting it right. Thank you for listening.